Hey everybody, Alex here, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about my top 10 films of 2018. Now, I know in the one episode of the podcast I did my list and I read through it, but I started thinking about some of these, and I started to think about how films really impacted me, and very interestingly, I think my list has changed a bit. So, one, I felt it important to dive through this again because it's changed. But two, I just think it's important for me to kind of separate some of my reviews and the podcast. And I still want to do reviews in the podcast, but I think it'll also be cool to record a different version of the review, maybe a little bit more in depth for you guys for the YouTube channel, and I think I can really provide a little bit more intimacy with that. So, without further ado, I'm going to dive into my list. Now, I know when I went through last time, I'm pretty sure I mentioned Hereditary. Now, at the time, I said I needed to give it another viewing before I would rate it, and before I decided where it went, and I also had to do the same with Halloween. Well, I went back and I rewatched Halloween, and I went back and I really thought long and hard about Hereditary. I still need to give it that next viewing, but I really just thought about how that movie affected me, and how it got to me, and how it was a little rough for me at the time. I went and I forgot to take my anxiety medicine, and I was the only person in the theater. So that's always a great combo. But I just have to say, the movie really kind of shot up my rankings when I thought about how that movie affected me. I'm still thinking about it, and I saw that back in August or July or something. I mean, this was months ago. And out of all the movies I saw, Hereditary stuck with me, as well as some of the very, very top of my list. And I think that alone deserves to bring it up in my ranking from an honorable mention to a higher ranking. I'm not going to give it away, because what's the point of a top 10 if you jump right up somewhere, you know? You've gotta really sit and think about it. And I really think Halloween's gonna stay at an honorable mention, but A Quiet Place is gonna drop down to an honorable mention. I think I'll start with A Quiet Place because I think that's a great place to go. I think for me, Halloween 2018 has moved above A Quiet Place. On that second viewing in 4K, I think there were just some new details I picked up, and just really watching it again, the film's growing on me a little bit more. Now, I really loved it when I saw it in the theaters, and I can definitely see some of the problems that some people had, and in all honesty, the problems really just don't bother me that much. And I really think that some people are getting hung up on one specific thing involving the doctor character. I really don't want to ruin it, because I was not expecting it, and it surprised me enough that it actually elevated the film for me. You're not expecting what happens. And that really gave a lot to my viewing experience. So, Quiet Place and Halloween are my honorable mentions. I think they're both solid films. I think they're both movies I'm going to revisit. I have them both on 4K, so that's really cool. A Quiet Place, I really don't have any problems with the movie. The ending is very effective. And it's emotional. It's a really solid film, and I've been going back and forth on this. I'm like, oh, does Halloween pass it? I mean, I've seen A Quiet Place once, and I've seen Halloween 3 times. Maybe that's what's doing it, but I guess when it's an honorable mention, I don't have to put put one above the other. So A Quiet Place and Halloween, those are my honorable mentions, and I'm excited for where horror's going in 2019. So without further ado, time for the top 10. All right, coming in at number 10 is most people's favorite film of the year. I think a lot of people really loved this one, and I was shocked with how much I enjoyed it, in all honesty. Marvel's Infinity War. It's a film that I think a lot of people have been looking forward to ever since that first Avengers film. I really think it delivered on a lot of what was getting set up. And in all honesty, I think it's probably the best MCU film. I really would struggle to think about one that I think's better. I mean, I think I liked Guardians of the Galaxy a little bit more, but that's really a preference thing, because I think Guardians is just, it works. They're funny, and I think it's very stylized in a way that I appreciate, and I think it's a shame the director got the boot, but maybe he'll save the DCU, and maybe Suicide Squad 2 isn't going to suck. So I think we have a lot to look forward there. But yeah, Infinity War, just it's a cool story. This has been set up for a long time, and I guess using story might be a bold use of the word for some people, because Infinity War is really not focused on plot. It's very much focused on, okay, here's Thanos, here's the big bad guy we've been looking forward to, and we know he's so much more powerful than anybody else in the universe, so how do the superheroes fare against him? We actually see the superheroes actually kind of fail in some ways during this one, which is a shocker, because in a lot of these Marvel movies, it's kind of that 80s hero mentality where, you know they're going to win. You know they're just going to defeat the guy. They're just going to go through him like a, crap through a goose, as Patton says in the classic film. I just really, I'm really excited, because I think, the last couple of years for Marvel has been a big step up from where they were. I wouldn't call myself a Marvel hater. Other people would. I like probably about half of the films they've done, and then the other half of them I think aren't as good as they have ratings for on Rotten Tomatoes. I think Disney and Marvel get a free pass a lot of the time because of their better movies, and I will admit they have some damn good movies. I think when Pixar puts a movie out, I'm always looking forward to it, and I'm always excited, and Pixar has a movie on my list. I really love what Pixar does, but these separate entities from Disney, I operate a little different than they do, and I'll be the first to say that even Disney itself has a lot of great stuff. It's just, I'm not exactly a huge fan of their kind of their motto and what they're known for, which is kind of putting out the same movie over and over and over again, just marketing it a little different with a different kind of person rather than a different story. But I think they're starting to change. I think you see a lot of these companies changing, because Marvel was kind of like that. Their first run, I liked the first Iron Man movie, but I think the second MCU movie that I would actually say I liked, honestly, I got to run through. Maybe Winter Soldier, and I don't know how much time's in between there. That might be a whole bunch of those movies. I really don't keep that good a track of them, but I enjoy the funnier ones and I enjoy the really serious ones, but I don't like that mix that they do. I don't like the Joss Whedon style of movies. I don't like either of his Avengers movies. I think they're okay, but it's just not my kind of movie. I don't like a movie that goes drastic changes in tone in seconds. You'll see somebody get shot up, and then all of a sudden somebody's cracking a joke. But it's how it's delivered. It feels like somebody in a room wrote a joke and they threw it into the movie rather than a coherent sense of something. It doesn't. I can't feel the passion in a lot of Marvel stuff. But Infinity War is really kind of surprising, and I know the guys who've done and did in Infinity War are the guys from Civil War and Winter Soldier, and I do think they do a really good job. I also really like Thor Ragnarok, and I like the Ant-Man movies and Guardians. So, I'm excited to see where Marvel goes, because the last couple of years they've taken some big strides and they're really moving forward. I really am excited to see them kind of push the envelope with superhero movies and kind of get a little bit of style and kind of directors' visions on the screen. So, that being said, Infinity War, you're number 10. At number 9, Mission Impossible Fallout. Man, when I was hearing word about this, I was like, wow. It had some kind of outrageous Rotten Tomatoes score, like a 97 or 98 or something. I was going to see it, and I'd been dealing with some stuff at the time, but I went into it, and it blew me away. I think for an action movie, all of the stuff that goes on in it is incredible enough without even knowing the behind-the-scenes stuff. But when you realize and you find out that Tom Cruise actually learned to fly a helicopter and he actually does his own helicopter stunts in the movie, I think that's incredible. And there's some other kinds of stuff you just see and you're like, oh, that's got to be CGI, right? In today's CGI world, oh, we'll just do it in post. We don't have to try to figure any kind of thing out. We'll just let the Koreans fix it in post. And no, Mission Impossible Fallout goes for practical about everything they can. And it really kept me in the movie. There was no kind of, I didn't have to try to imagine that was real, because it was. And there's just some absolutely phenomenal shots and stuff that you see in the movie. This had passion in it. You could tell everybody who worked on this really wanted to make it good. And you can really tell that Henry Cavill made the right choice, making that the priority over Justice League. And I think if you watch both those movies, you'll definitely see that he made the right choice. I mean, there's not really much more to be said. I think Mission Impossible Fallout is in that John Wick category of being a film that's made me excited for action movies again. I mean, there was a stretch where every action movie I was going to was just this uninspired, drab, kind of boring fest. And when I use the term boring, I mean like, there's nothing special. The film was just manufactured, pumped out, and they just said, well, here you go. It didn't feel like it was coming from any kind of place that they cared that much about. They were just going, well, time for us to take your money. And people started calling them out on it, and people weren't going to the movies as much. And they're making better movies, and I think people are going to see them again. The last couple of years, I think movies are trending up. At least that upper tier of movies are trending up. I don't think there's a single movie on my list, and that includes the honorable mentions, that I would give less than like a 9 out of 10. And I know some people would think, oh, A Quiet Place in Halloween 2018, a 9 out of 10, that's a little bold. I don't really think so. I enjoyed it on that level, and I'm not comparing them to, the all-time greats. I'm kind of grading them on their own scales. I'm kind of grading them on how much I enjoyed them and on the year. And I'm not sure that it's always fair to throw, this new movie up against, 2001 and judge it on that scale, because, not every film's going for that. It's not fair to do that. And I think the vice versa is also true. I don't think people should be judging 2001: A Space Odyssey based off of modern ideas. I don't think people should look at 2001 and say, well, the pacing is slow. I think it was a deliberate choice, obviously. And even at the time, people called it slow. Movies were slower paced back then. But that's because, one, it was the style of the time, but two, it put a little bit more impact in you. And with kind of a slow trudge through things, it makes everything more powerful, more impactful, and it stays with you. A slower pace allows things to sink in and set their spot, and then they can hit home with certain things. In a movie like The Exorcist, I've heard people say, oh, it was slow, it was boring, this, that, and the other thing. I don't know that there's a horror movie that's impacted me on an emotional level more than The Exorcist. And I don't know that there's ever going to be a horror film that's going to do that kind of same impact on me of when I saw that. But, you know, it's not fair for me to go into every horror movie and saying, well, you gotta impact me like The Exorcist. Nope, you gotta, you know, take me to this emotional spot. And you've got to just absolutely scare me, but also bring me to tears in the same thing. That's incredibly hard. But I kind of started feeling that way a little bit about The Exorcist. I'm not sure that much about the emotional side of things, but it's complex. And I do really want to talk about that when we get there. So, anyway, Mission Impossible Fallout was a very good movie, and I'm really glad I saw it. So that's my number 9. My number 8, Steven Spielberg, man. He still got it. Ready Player One was probably the most fun I had at the movies. It was one of those fun movies that you just go and you say, I'm here for this ride. Where's it going? What am I going to see? And you have no idea. And it just delivers this adventure. And I don't think there's ever been anybody as good as taking you on an adventure as Steven Spielberg. Whether it's, you know, Indiana Jones venturing into places and discovering things, or, you know, we're trying to get E.T. back home, or Oskar Schindler saving as many people as he did. I mean, every film Spielberg does has a kind of charm to it. And I think even his quote-unquote lesser films like War Horse or 1941, I still think they're a fun-ass time. And I'd suggest every film he's done. I think some people are really hard on him because of how successful he's been. I mean, he's probably the most successful director of all time in terms of, you know, sheer amount of movies, amount they've made, and critical and audience scores combined. I really don't know that there's anybody better at playing that kind of crowd pleaser role than Steven Spielberg. But I mean, he's not afraid to go all out on you, though. Saving Private Ryan, I don't know that there's many people who could sit down, watch that, and come out the same person. I mean, that's a very impactful film, and obviously I'd say the same about Schindler's List. Steven Spielberg is a master of what he does, and Ready Player One is really fun. It's a great time. It looks good. Every bit of the CGI didn't bother me, and I'm a guy who's not a CGI lover, but I'm not talking about, you know, CGI blood splatter in a horror movie or a CGI thing trying to scare and intimidate me. We're talking about, these are supposed to be video game characters. Video games are digital. They're not supposed to look real. So I didn't see that problem when some people were saying that kind of stuff to me. I'm like, what do you mean, Ready Player One? The CGI was bothering you? It's not supposed to be real. These aren't real people. And I think if you could take a step back and go, what would a video game world be like in the future with this whole connected VR thing? I mean, I guess I'd say I kind of hope it's like Ready Player One. Steven Spielberg, man, he still got it. Number 7, I have Incredibles 2. Incredibles 2 was a damn good movie. I think Pixar always delivers on their films. I know sometimes people, you know, maybe they'll pick at some things, and I will rescind that because I'm sorry. I am not, you know, going to defend Cars 2 or 3. And I know those were huge moneymakers, especially from the toy side of things. So anytime Disney can play it for money, you know they're gonna. But I don't think Cars 2 or 3 are terrible movies. I wouldn't even call them bad movies. I'm just saying they're not what people expect from Pixar. When people take their kids to see Pixar movies, they expect that not only that their kids are going to have fun, but that they're going to have fun. They're going to laugh. They're going to enjoy the ride, and they're going to see where it goes. I really enjoy just about everything they've done. And Incredibles 2, I think, delivers the sequel we've all been looking forward to since that first one. We had to wait 15 years, But, the gang's back. They bring their powers, and I had fun. I had a good time, but it was also a good story. I think they delivered it, and they shocked a lot of people with who the real bad guy is. I think people were kind of expecting a certain thing the way Disney's been going, and I think people who saw The Last Jedi know exactly what I'm talking about here. But, they subverted my expectations in that regard, and it wasn't what you're expecting, but they weren't setting things up and not delivering on them. They fulfilled just about everything that they're setting up, but there were certain elements or certain things you were expecting, and they went against them, but in a mysterious kind of way. And I love the kind of noir mystery element of Incredibles and how it kind of has that kind of old-time feel, because I'm a big fan of noir films and all those classics. So Incredibles, you knocked it out of the park. Number 7 is I think a really great spot to say you're the 7th best film of the year. I really hope Pixar keeps knocking them out of the park, and as long as they keep making good movies, I'm going to keep going. Now, the film I've been talking about since the beginning, I think's finally going to make its appearance. No film impacted me immediately in terms of like when something happened, I physically couldn't tolerate it, like Hereditary. While watching Hereditary, the tone and the feeling that the movie gave me made me physically stand up and I got moving. I moved 2 rows behind me because of how it affected me. Now, will I say I saw it by myself in a theater, and I sat in the front row because I'm like, oh, hey, let's see how this goes. It's going to be great. It's going to be a great movie. I can't wait. I wasn't ready for this. I wasn't prepared, and I would say that most people weren't. I think most modern horror goers are just looking for jump scares, and that's not me being insulting. I love horror movies. I've always been a fan, and I'm always going to be a fan. I'm currently working on a few projects that's gonna lead to some horror films down the road here, and horror is one of those genres that's so polarizing, just from the fact that there's a good portion of people that don't like horror movies straight off, and they're not going to like horror movies. Then there's a portion of people that like certain kinds of horror movies, but depending on what kind they are. And there's so many subgenres that it's just really interesting to see how things are going with the genre. So the things about horror is I'd kind of divide it into 2 major categories, or two very different categories, and that would be, I guess you could really divide all films into these 2 categories, but you have impactful versus fun. Now I think those mean different things to different people, and I know that's very I'm losing the word here, very generic. I know that, fun versus impactful is so loose, but I really think you have your slashers. It's kind of your classic idea of the fun horror film. And then you have your very impactful film in the horror genre, and that'd be, Exorcist, The Omen, Alien, The Shining. These films that kind of go for a lot more than just a guy in a mask killing people. And I'm not trying to be mean to the slasher genre. There's a lot of them I love. I love just about every Dario Argento Giallo film, and I really am a fan of Giallo, which is, your Italian mystery slasher, and a lot of them are from, late 60s through the early 80s, and they kind of really created the genre. And even John Carpenter said when he was making Halloween, he was very inspired by Giallo. And I think it's obvious to see if you've ever seen a movie like the original Suspiria or Deep Red, even Tenebrae or Inferno. I know I'm only listing Dario Argento here, but I mean, he's a guy who's really impacted me from a film standpoint, that those films really impact me. I really want to see where the mystery goes. I really want to see how things go, and the blood and the way things look. Yes, the blood doesn't look real, and it's very red, and it's almost too red. But it almost makes it a little bit more affecting on a weird kind of plane of like you're not comprehending quite what's going on. And I love that about it. I'm not sure horror films have to be this hyper real kind of thing. But with Hereditary falling under the more impactful category, it has those elements of surrealism. And I think surrealism can fall under the impactful side. But Hereditary, I mean, I'd go as far as saying that, like, from an emotional level, I had to get up and move back 2 rows. I can't say that about any film I've ever seen in the movie theaters. But there is a certain specific scene that I was not prepared for, that this tension that builds up from the beginning, when it's released, it releases hard. And then it starts again, and it builds on you for the rest of the film. This is going to be the horror film that I think people will be talking about 20, 30 years from now. They're going to be talking about, Hereditary. And Hereditary has some fantastic critical reviews and has really good reviews just about everywhere except for Rotten Tomatoes audience score. It's very down the middle. It's something like 60 some percent. I think it's a shame. And I know initially when I saw it, I really didn't know how to feel, because I mean, it really got to me. I really was not prepared to feel the way it made me feel, and to get at me those ways, and with certain kind of ideas of the family dynamic, it kind of broke me. And I think just realizing how impactful it's going to be, and how impactful it was on myself, going back and watching it, I have to prepare myself. I'm going to have to really make sure I'm in a good spot. And to say that about a movie, I mean, that is some accomplishment. And now I heard these rumors that there were teens in theaters laughing about about some of the stuff in the movie or in the scene. First of all, I want to know, one, how did these teens get into an R-rated film? And I know that's beside the point, but even if this is true, I think this is one of those cases of, these people, especially teenagers, are going to have a hard time comprehending what's going on in the film. And maybe the only way to kind of tolerate it is by pretending you think it's funny. I know there were points in the movie where I kind of was like, oh, I kind of don't want to be feeling this. This is getting to me. This foreboding atmosphere is digging deep into me, and it's making me ask questions, and I'm not sure I want to be doing that. I really think this is a case of, there's that segment of people who were I guess they were expecting, your typical slasher fare kind of thing, I guess. I really don't know what happened with this, because it's an incredibly well-made movie. For its musical minimalism, I have to praise that. I mean, the score is nothing grandiose or really, it's not really present. You don't really notice the soundtrack. You don't notice the score. It's very much like the original Alien, where it's so subtle and it sinks in there that it works so perfectly with the film. So I have to absolutely say, just really thinking about it, Hereditary goes automatically from an honorable mention to 6, because I honestly can't think, I mean, outside of my top 2 films there's not a film that affected me more than it. And I think if I give it another viewing and it impacts me on the same way, and also knowing where it's going and everything, it might get that much better for me. I really think if you're in a spot where you want to watch a horror movie that's going to like absolutely get at you, and something that you haven't seen and you're open to anything, definitely check it out. You're not going to regret Hereditary. Now, if you're in an emotionally unstable spot, or you don't like horror movies that terrify you, please, I would say probably stay away from it. Because honestly, I don't think it's fair to a filmmaker to have somebody who's not going to like something before they see it go into something. I don't think that's fair for somebody who hates a genre or something. Because there's a lot of times where I'll see like critics, they'll go into a movie and then they'll berate it, but when you read it, you realize it's like, you just don't like that genre of movie. You were never going to like this. Or I've heard somebody say, John Carpenter's The Thing was a bad movie because it was so sci-fi and it was so out there. I couldn't believe it. And it's like, what were you expecting? It's called The Thing. It's about a thing coming here, becoming people, and then... That's a whole nother story for a whole nother day, but it's just, you can't use your preferences to judge a movie, and I don't think that you should tear down a score of something because it didn't fit your pre-existing idea of what the movie should be. And I feel that way about a lot of movies. I think I just did a review for The Predator. I think that movie got attacked for what people were expecting. Now, I don't think The Predator's on the same level as Hereditary, and even redoing this list, I'm not going to throw The Predator into my top 10. No, it's not happening. But I think The Predator was a good time, and it was enjoyable, and I think these kind of movies, like Hereditary, that are kind of divisive or necessary for film. I think a movie that's not necessarily, it's for everyone. I think that's a load of horse shit, honestly, when I hear, this movie's for everyone. There aren't any movies for anyone. For everyone, I'm sorry. Because people are all coming from different places and people are looking for different things. There's not going to be a one-size-fits-all for anybody because there's so many different genres and there's so many different styles and kinds of movies, different pacing and stuff. I just don't think it's fair to other people, because when somebody might go into Hereditary and they're going in and they already hate horror movies, and they go, okay, Hereditary's a 1 out of 10 because it was so terrifying, it was too scary. I mean, now all of a sudden, that score has been dropped because of that person. And if there's enough of them, that score is going to be appearing lower. And all of a sudden, we have people who would love to see that movie not checking it out because they're seeing this low score. I think a great example of that for me was Under the Skin. I mean, it has a 6.3 out of 10 on IMDb, which I can't for the life of me understand how. Now, I realize it's not one full of character development and your typical story, and there's a lot of people who, if you are looking for that classic drama, that classic dynamic of, you're going to build the characters, things are going to happen with them, there's going to be turmoil, we're going to lead to a climax, and then we're coming out of it. Under the Skin doesn't have any of that shit. Under the Skin doesn't pull punches. Under the Skin goes places that you don't understand exactly where it's going, but that's part of its experience. It's one of those crazy films, and my top 2 are both of those kind, where it really challenges you as a viewer, and I think different people are going to feel differently about the movie depending on who they are and how they're going into it and what they're seeing. And I think it's one of those things of, it's like that old experiment where it's a multi-shaped, not a box, but let's just, for all intents and purposes, let's say it's a box. It's a multi-shaped box. So like one side will be pointed like a star, and then one side might be rounded, and one side might look like a square. And everybody's standing at a different angle, so they're seeing it differently, and the rest of it's kind of cut off from them. And then they ask them what shape it is, and they're all saying different things. And then all of a sudden, the people are looking at each other like they're crazy, and they don't understand why they're not seeing it their way. It's the same shape, like they're all seeing the same box, but somebody's like, it's a star. What, you guys are stupid. It's a star. And then another guy's going, it's a circle. How do you think it's a star? It's rounded. And then somebody's seen it as a box, and they're just like, all of you people are nuts. I think it's that kind of way with movies, especially with movies like Under the Skin, and I'd even say Hereditary kind of falls into that. You know, I think every movie does, where we're going to see it a little differently, and because of that, we're going to feel differently. I don't think it's fair to take, these very well done movies and say they're terrible because they didn't agree with your bias. And Hereditary is a phenomenally well-made film, and for the people who were laughing at it or whatever, I don't know how. You're used to those kind of generic slashers, and that's fine, and I'm not even going to say that those movies shouldn't be made, because if you really enjoy them, go ahead and enjoy them. But don't start being mean to other people because you like something else of the sort. So definitely check Hereditary out, and I'm also going to throw a plug in for you. Definitely check out Under the Skin. You should definitely see that movie. It's pretty incredible. Just know it's not your typical viewing experience. It's not a character developed drama. It's definitely a horror sci-fi, and there's some stuff in there that might get under your skin. So we find ourselves in the top 5 now. These are my creme de la creme, my top movies of the year. So what better way to start it than with Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs. Now this movie, I'll be honest, I'm a fan of Wes Anderson. I like a lot of his movies, and I liked every movie I've seen from him. And Fantastic Mr. Fox, his other stop-motion film, I love. I think it's incredible. The amount of effort and time that people put in to not let this art die, I think is incredible. That in today's, we'll just do it with a computer age, that people spent the time to do every little motion with the characters and every expression with their hands on set with a camera, and they move it and a shot, and they move it in a shot. That's incredible. And I'm not even just elevating that movie because of that. The movie itself's damn incredible. And even if you're not focused on that effort that was put in, it's a really funny movie. I could go on and on about the cast. You have Jeff Goldblum, Bill Murray. You have just about everybody you could get, because Wes Anderson gets a lot of the best people in his movies because those people care about his movies. They really like being with him because it really showcases a different element. Wes Anderson is a much different filmmaker than your typical comedy director. I don't even know that you could call Wes Anderson a comedy director because of how well he does his movies. They're not just a series of jokes designed to make you laugh. And if that's all you want, I don't understand why stand-up comedy isn't more popular than it is. But Wes Anderson's films come from a auteur perspective of he's going to manage a lot of the aspects of filmmaking. He's going to very hands-on be there, but he's going to let his actors and his crew breathe. He's going to let them be them while also directing them towards what he's looking for. And he does an excellent job of that. And he gets great performances out of inexperienced people, and he gets great performances out of people who've been acting for 50 years. So just about every movie he's going to come out with for the rest of his career, I'm going to be there. Because as long as he's putting in this kind of effort and he cares that much about filmmaking, I feel almost obligated to to be there. It's a great story. Isle of Dogs is. It's gonna. I think it's gonna affect a lot of people because a lot of us have dogs and a lot of us really love them. And even if you say the name of the movie slowly, I love dogs. It's I love dogs, and its approach to things is very different, very bold, and I think it's gonna work with some people a little more than others. But I don't think I saw a bad review for this movie. I don't think I saw really any kind of bad scores. I mean, across the board, it's got pretty phenomenal scores, and it's because it's a pretty phenomenal film. I just got to go out and say Isle of Dogs deserves top 5, and I think it deserves to be looked at for best animated film of the year because I don't think this style gets appreciated as much as it should be. And hey, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which I can't believe I forgot to leave off I forgot to throw on this list because I just saw it. Wow. We're gonna say this: Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Let me be real quick here. I have a review for that coming out soon. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse would be in my top 10, and it would replace Infinity War. But I did this list up before I saw it, and shame on me. But with this new year, I'm going to try to be a little bit more up to date and keep with things and see those top tier. But I still think Isle of Dogs is better than Into the Spider-Verse. I'd probably put Into the Spider-Verse probably probably 8th. I'd put it right above Ready Player One. Maybe it's on par with Incredibles 2. I see now I would really have to debate this and really look at it and crunch the numbers and stuff. It's a top 10 film, and I think that should deserve to get nominated too. I think, Incredibles 2, Isle of Dogs, and Into the Spider-Verse should all be nominated for Best Animated Film. So, sorry, Spider-Man, but you didn't make this list purely because I made this list before I saw Into the Spider-Verse. Shame on me, but Isle of Dogs, number 5. Check it out. Definitely I recommend it to everyone. I think it's one of those movies where I'm not sure everybody's going to love it, but I think even the people who aren't in love with it will still find good enjoyment in it, and they'll at least appreciate a lot of the elements of it. As I said, I don't think there's a movie that's for everyone in terms of its perfection to everybody, but I think as long as you appreciate the art of stop motion and you appreciate what people went through to do it and you appreciate the story and the comedy, I think you'll like it. So Isle of Dogs definitely deserves number 5. My number 4 film, BlacKkKlansman. I mean, I don't know that there's so much for me to say about this one, and that's not me being like, I just put it on my number 4. No, it's more of, it's just a damn good movie. This was a great ride all the way through. Spike Lee clearly still has it. He's a phenomenal filmmaker, and he always has been. Ever since Let the Right One In is a damn good movie, and I was really happy when I saw that a couple years back. And this one, it was a really cool throwback to 70s. To the 70s and to that 70s era, but also 70s filmmaking. There's a lot of that kind of deep and injected into this film, and I really appreciate that. My favorite era of film is the 70s, and I think it's the era that's the most impactful films were made, and it's because the style was built for having an impact on you. You had to have the patience for it. But if you're willing to go in knowing that, the film's not going to just jump out in your face and things are just going to happen and there's going to be stuff going on all the time. Oh my gosh, explosions, comedy, just laugh. If you go in expecting the unexpected and you go in saying, let's see where we go. 70s films will take you all over the place. It'll take you everywhere and anywhere. you didn't know where you were going to go in a 70s movie. I think starting with the 80s, you had your more predictability injected. And I think the 90s got back to that kind of classic filmmaking. But the 80s is a decade that was a lot more focused on, you're here for laughs, all laughs. You're here for action, all action. You're here for horror, all horror. But that I don't even know how to feel about that, because I think 80s horror has an incredible volume of good horror movies. But if we're saying we're going to take the creme de la creme kind of thing, and we're going to take that top layer, I mean, you have The Thing, and then I'd have to think, which is crazy, being that I love so many horror movies. But, I just, in my opinion, I would not, stack like that next tier of horror movies up against, what the 70s had, because the 70s just had such a volume of phenomenal horror and phenomenal films that BlacKkKlansman made me feel that kind of way again. There's another film on this list that really delved into that 70s style, that impacting style, which definitely I'm excited about. But BlacKkKlansman was funny when it needed to be and when it wanted to be. It injected humor, I felt, at the right spots. It was kind of a powerful movie when you let all the different things sit in of, what's going on during the movie. This guy kind of facing his ultimate evil, his ultimate opposite. And the kind of the bravery that it takes to say that, that was a true story. This guy actually faced the Klan as a African-American man. I think that's incredible. And I'm just going to say the ending of this movie, regardless of political affiliation, I think it'll get you thinking. And I think it'll get most people thinking who watch it. And I think, there's still some ground that has to be covered, but this is one of those movies that if you are not just so strongly opposed to the message of the movie, I think it's going to sit well with you. And I'm not even going to say that there's not really any kind of politically charged stuff till the end, and I really don't want to delve too much into that, but it's not a political movie. It has a political scene, but I think a lot of that scene is not charged in political nature, but more in a anti-racist nature. So I think we can all work on being a little less racist, and I think Jordan Peele with Get Out nailed a different aspect of racism that I think if you did a double feature of Get Out and BlacKkKlansman, I think it would really make you think differently about every kind of racism and every kind of political correctness and political nature, and it would challenge you to really think how you feel about that stuff. So I don't want to go too much into that because I know politics is one of those discussions that really is going to divide viewers or divide people, so I don't want to go there. But BlacKkKlansman's definitely a great film. I saw it with my friend and his mother, and we talked about it the whole ride back to his place, and it was really one of those really damn good movies. Moving on, number 3, Stars Born. Stars Born really is an impactful film. I think it deserves a Best Picture nomination. I think it has a chance to win it. I don't know if it will or not. I went to see it with a friend, and he said it was the best movie he saw, and he said that it might even be his favorite movie of all time, which that's a very bold claim, but it's his list, and it's how he feels about it. I mean, at this point, everything in my top 5 gets a 10 out of 10 from me. in terms of enjoyment, um, A Star is Born is a really phenomenal film, and it really delivers a lot. It really takes you places that are very interesting to see, because we're not really privy to a lot of the stuff going on behind the scenes with the entertainment industry. And to kind of see how it is to be a star and where that takes you and what that life has in store for you, you think it's all gold and candy and everything, sugar spice and everything nice, as the Powerpuff Girls intro would say. But you see a lot of those negative aspects, and you see a lot of the dark places it'll take in, and kind of things are presented very nicely to you and presented in a way that it's like, oh, it's going to help you. It's going to be great for your career. Things are just go along with it. You kind of see ramifications of that, and you see what happens to the people around you. And, honestly, I have to say, I'm not ashamed to admit I cried during A Star is Born, especially the ending. I think it's hard for you not to. It's one of those films, bring the tissues, but it's a very infecting movie, and it gets you to think, and it gets you to feel. And I think that's one of the best things a film can do, is make you feel something intensely. This isn't a film that's I don't think it's gonna really just depress you. I think it's gonna be more of that emotional sadness together, and something that's gonna move you, and it's gonna make you really think about some things. I really would say it's a phenomenal film, and if you're looking for something that will affect you and it's going to impact you, and you're really going to think about it, days after you've seen it, it's a film that you'll still look back on and be like, wow, that was a really moving film. That was a really great film, and I'm glad I saw it. So A Star is Born definitely deserves a spot in the top 5, and it's phenomenal. And I think on most years it'd probably be my number 1, but 2018 was kind of a special year. I had 2 movie-going experiences that had me sitting in the theater for minutes afterward just thinking about it, and the car ride home, and the days afterward, the weeks afterward, and still thinking about it now, about how they impacted me, how I felt, and how just absolutely phenomenal they were at the filmmaking aspects, the scores, the cinematography, where it goes, how it made me feel, and how it made me think, and all other sorts of things. I mean, these top 2 are in my all-time category kind of thing. If I had to do a top, 250 movies I've ever seen, I watch a whole lot of movies, but if I were to do, top 250, these would easily be in top 250. They'd probably be in my top 100 movies I've ever seen, and that's a big accomplishment. For somebody who may not watch as many movies, that might not sound as great, but I mean, I'm talking, these movies are better than some of my favorite horror movies. I'd say I was more impacted by these than, films like A Nightmare on Elm Street or hell, I'd say they impacted me more than some of those great Universal horror movies that I do think are fantastic. And, it'd be bold to say they're better than them, especially in terms of impact, but I really, really like these movies, and I really, really like how it kind of defines of maybe where horror can go, and how, horror's this genre that's so malleable in the sense of it can go anywhere and do anything, but studios are too afraid to, because, teenagers don't like to think. That's always been the sticking point, or the stigma is that horror fans are stupid. And in some cases, horror fans don't give things the benefit of the doubt sometimes. And I will say that these films got some mixed reviews, and to some people these are, top tier classics, and to other people they thought these were garbage or they were bad. And I really can't see that element, because these are phenomenally made films, phenomenally impacting and just thought-provoking to the nth degree. I mean, these films are above and beyond just things that I'm going to remember these movies till the day I die. And I'm going to want to watch these probably over and over again, see them multiple viewings, different times, different years. They're in that 2001 category, that Blade Runner category, that exploration into who we are. And that to me is, it's so hard to do right. It's so hard to do the thought-provoking genre right. And I'd say it is its own genre, a very thought-provoking film. You have that elite category of the thought-provoking films, as I said, 2001, Blade Runner, Donnie Darko. I would say The Thing deserves to get mentioned at least. I think it's a thought-provoking film because it brings into question of, who we are, or what's the thing. How do we know if we're a thing or not? Would we know? Are we completely taken over by this? Alien, I would say, deserves to be there. And now I think these two films do. And without further ado, number 2, Suspiria. The Suspiria remake. And I know that might be a bit of a shock, being that I'm a giant fan of the original, and a lot of times people who are huge fans of the original film usually don't love the remakes because they don't like where it goes. They don't like that it's not their original. But this and the original are totally different films, which I turned a bunch of people off. And on all honesty, Dario Argento even came out and said he really didn't like it. But if you've seen any film that Dario Argento has made recently, you'd maybe sit there and go, maybe the man doesn't exactly know anymore. And that's not to be offensive. I mean, I think Dario Argento is one of the best horror directors of all time. And with the original Suspiria and Deep Red alone to his name, 2 of horror's royalty films, I just don't know why some people kind of didn't appreciate this movie as much as I do, or as much as even people who just liked it. This movie went so differently than the original, and it went to places that I would say there are certain points in which it went, need I say, beyond where Hereditary went. In terms of, I mean, people who've seen it, the ending I think goes bolder than Hereditary's ending, which might be a shock if you've seen Hereditary and not this. And it really doesn't pull any punches. I mean, there was a lady in my row who jumped up during a scene and just started screaming, and then just couldn't believe it, and then sat back down and grabbed her boyfriend and was like, "Oh my god, oh my god!" And she just couldn't believe what was happening on screen, and it just kept going, and it kept going, and I mean, damn. I mean, there's some scenes in this movie that'll just make your jaw drop, but from a filmmaking standpoint, you know how bold it is to go with, a 5-act structure? And to tell, 5 kind of different stories in it? There's, micro stories. It's Kubrickian, I guess I'd say, in that it's not, introduce characters learn things about themselves, they build on it and grow, and then they get in trouble, they face they have to face the rival team, and then they band together to win the big game. This is not that movie. This isn't your Bad News Bears, This is witches at a ballet school and I don't even know how I could possibly give the plot for this movie without spoiling it, because you should go in without knowing anything. You should go in expecting whatever it's going to give you. And if you are a fan of make-you-think films or horror or both, if you like both, this is like a match made in heaven. If you like thought-provoking films and you at least appreciate horror, I think you'll love it also. The only people I really wouldn't suggest this to is people who get sick from what they're seeing on screen. If you can't tolerate a lot, Suspiria and Hereditary probably shouldn't be on the menu for you. If you don't like thought-provoking films, which I do know people who don't like that, who, you know, they kind of, they love Marvel and all that brings, where they're not going to be thinking about things. They just, I just want to get away, and I just want something to play in front of me, and I want to see how it plays out. I want it to go a certain way. I want my character development. I want this, that, and the other thing. And I want it. Those people aren't going to like Suspiria. So I hope that kind of gives you a good idea of how you'll feel about it. But I definitely suggest Suspiria. I mean, I put it number 2, but I think it's in a category by itself for this year and for this decade. I mean, these top 2 are in my top 10 of the decade. And being that we're just about out of it, that says a lot. My number 1, this film, when I saw this, I mean, I thought about this movie for months, and all the way up until the day it came out, I was so looking forward to this day. Annihilation, it annihilated me. I mean, I know that's, you know, the most punniest thing I could think of, but Annihilation, just, I couldn't believe how good it was. I couldn't believe how blown away I was by where this went. And it's not your typical film by any stretch of the imagination. It's kind of almost told in like a narrative kind of, narrator kind of way, where we kind of have Natalie Portman recounting what happened on her journey, and there'll be, you know, gaps in time will pass. You know, she'll be telling the story, and then she'll say, oh, and then all of a sudden I was here, and then it's like, well, what happened in that space? Well, we don't know. And that's the mystery of it. This movie's a lot about mystery. It's a lot about, what is this? What does this mean? What do we mean? What is this thing that came to Earth? Who are humans? What is humanity to Earth? Are humans kind of alien to Earth? Are we the thing that's killing the planet? Which a lot of people, I guess, would agree with that, and some other people say that humans aren't doing anything. But it makes you think. And it makes you think long and hard about a lot of things. And I think depending on who you are, you're going to see it differently, and you're going to see what it means differently. But I think that's fantastic that we can all look at this same kind of movie, and going back to that box thing I was talking about earlier. You know, for me, I saw the movie a lot as an allegory for, you know, cancer is a major theme, but kind of actions of humans and certain things. Are humans the cancer of the earth? Are we the thing spreading that's destroying what's here? And I think that got me thinking a lot about it. But there's so much other things in there, like what's the dynamic of a family or partnership? Do we even really know them? Because there's certain parts in this movie where you think you know a character, but then, you know, now you're, you know, the character, a different character. What I'm trying to say is that a certain character thinks they know somebody, but then that person is around them again, and then they can't tell if they're the same person or not. I mean, I'm trying to be as vague as possible here, but that kind of dynamic there, I mean, that's crazy. But I think all in all, a lot of the film's about the idea of annihilation. It's exactly what it is. It's based off of a book, and I definitely would suggest the book as well. And I think the book series is great if you're looking for something a little bit on the psychedelic experimental side of things. This film, I mean, it's so much its title. It's the people finding their way of annihilating themselves that, as one of my favorite bands would say, you did it to yourself, or you do it to yourself. Just you. And all the Radiohead fans just gave me a thumbs up, so I'm glad for that. But it's crazy that there's so many times where maybe we want to look to blame others, and we're looking to blame anything else except for ourselves. But the only thing to blame is ourselves. We made decisions that put us in these positions. But I think accepting that is the biggest thing. And I think there's a lot of that in this film. That if you can look at some of your past failures and accept that it's on you, you can prevent yourself in the future from making those same mistakes. One, which you never want to make the same mistake twice, because you should have already learned the lesson. But if you learn from that, maybe it'll help you be a better person, or at least help you deal with the next time you make a mistake, or the next time anything comes your way. You can work at becoming the person you always wanted to be. And I think for me, that's what this movie was. It was a very impacting film in that realm. And for you guys, I would definitely suggest it, but I'd also say go in with a very open mind, and I think you won't be disappointed. This movie is Aliens meets 2001 meets, just a psychedelic mind trip. I mean, I don't even know how to describe. There's an element in this movie that, with music, you can say psychedelic, and I think you can easily pinpoint something. But psychedelic filmmaking, I mean, it's a whole nother realm of thing, but it's kind of been, I'd say, from certain aspects of that psychedelic nature, the only films that really kind of come close to it, I guess I'd say the original Suspiria is definitely a psychedelic film. I'm sure I'm blanking on some great ones. 2001, obviously, is, and Clockwork Orange, and a lot of other great landmark films of like that era, that sweet spot of the mid 60s through the mid 70s, the Vietnam era, produced a lot of the greatest music and movies the world's ever seen. And it's hard to know if that's exactly because the pressure of the war put that on the artists, or if people were just more passionate then. I mean, I don't know how to exactly explain it, but Annihilation captures kind of that feel, kind of that idea of maybe coming out a better person. So anyway, this was my top 10 list, and obviously it wasn't that kind of typical, top 10 of just running through some films and talking about them lightly. I might do that to include Into the Spider-Verse. I might do a quick run through later, but I think for all intents and purposes, I think this was a nice definitive way of telling this and going into some different places and kind of giving you guys a nice sized episode, delving into maybe some different things and not just listing movies for you. So, what did you guys think of 2018? Let us know down in the comments. Definitely would love to read through them and see what you guys thought. See what you guys think of 2018 films, and if you guys are excited for 2019. I know I'm looking forward to seeing some movies here. I really want to see Glass. I'm a big fan of Unbreakable and Split, and I want to see where Shyamalan goes with that. I mean, he films all of his movies in my area, and he's from around where I am, so I know that that's a big inspiration to me to to kind of know that he's kind of pushing ground and doing a lot of really cool films around me, and that kind of gives me hope that I can do this too. So guys, until the next time, I hope everything goes well for you, and wish you the best. If you could leave a like, that'd be fantastic. Subscribe, and we'll definitely deliver some more great content your way. This channel is going to grow this year, and we're not gonna stop at it. We're gonna definitely keep pushing forward, and we're gonna try some different things, and we'll see what you like. So, guys, let us know down below, and we'll see you next time.